20 years after the first alien invasion in 1996, Earth is at peace. The nations have put their differences aside and founded ESD, Earth Space Defense. With salvaged pieces from the fallen ships, they were able to reverse engineer the alien technology and create an alert system against extraterrestrial threats. ESD has established its headquarters in Area 51 and is based on the Moon, Mars, and Saturn's moon Rhea. What Earthlings don't know is that aliens still look at our planet, and former President Whitmore still has nightmares about it. These dreams show him a strange vision of a circular figure with a line that he can't stop drawing. Meanwhile, on the moon base, Jake and Charlie siphon off new parts from the base's defense system to create a giant weapon. In the process, something mysteriously goes wrong, and the tugs are unable to keep the gun open. Commander Jang orders the boys to retreat, but Jake ignores the orders and uses his ship to push the weapon back. He triggers the fusion engine, which will likely burn the ship, but Jake quickly works in and puts the weapon back in place before that happens. When he returns to the base, Jang still berates Jake for blaming her for the mistake and causing him until further notice. At Area 51, General Adams is called to the base for an emergency. The aliens who were captured 20 years ago had always been in a catatonic state until now. Suddenly they wake up and shiver in their cages. Adams wants to discuss this with the Director of Environment and Sustainable Development, but he cannot be reached. It turns out that David is in Africa with Floyd, the government-appointed warden. They meet warlord Umbuto and his rebel forces, whose headquarters are surrounded by strange bones. They are not happy to see David, but before things can escalate, Catherine steps in and assures the warriors that David is with her. Evidently, Catherine has been working here for a while, studying the psychological connection Umbutu has with aliens. Catherine takes David to see the only ship that has landed on Earth in 20 years. The locals fought the aliens who got out of this ship for 10 years, and Umbutu explains that the ship's lights turned on by themselves 2 days ago. They also discover a giant hole in the Earth, revealing that the aliens were trying to dig into the core of the planet and were stopped when they blew up the mothership during the First War. The group enters the ship and discovers that the computer is sending a signal that David recognizes as a distress call that someone has already answered. Back on the moon, Jake video chats with her friend Patricia, who happens to be Whitmore's daughter. Patricia tells him that the International Legacy Squadron will be visiting the moon base soon, and this includes their friend Dylan, with whom Jake had a fight a few years ago. Jake nearly kills Dylan during a flight test, so Patricia wants Jake to be nice and accept that it was his fault. Later, the squadron arrives and everyone is excited to meet Dylan as he is the protege of war hero Stephen the Wast. During lunch, Jake runs up to Dylan and instead of being nice, taunts him, saying that Dylan was in his way again. This causes Dylan to punch him, getting Jang's attention. Jake covers Dylan and says he fell before going back to his room, where he admits to Charlie that he took her away. The next day at the medical bay at Area 51, Dr. Isaac visits his wife, Okun, a director of research whom he loves. Zombies during the First War. To Isaac's shock, Yukon suddenly awakens, not realizing that 2 decades have passed until he sees how much Isaac has changed. Meanwhile, Adams receives news that the base in Rhea has been completely destroyed, and they are now on high alert. In Africa, David is finally informed of the emergency, but Catherine remains obsessed with analyzing the omnipresent circle drawings. Umbutu takes them to his office and shows him all the drawings he made based on the visions he's seen since the ship woke up. The circle looks more like some kind of alien, and Umbutu has also managed to decode some strange languages. On the moon, everyone starts to panic when they notice a vortex forming in the atmosphere. This turns out to be a wormhole, from which a spherical machine similar to Umbuto's vision emerges. They send a transmission to President Lanford and David, who realizes that the field is a starship. Lanford thinks they should attack first, but David points out that these are not the same type of ships from the last invasion. It could come from a different alien race, with different intentions. Lanford allows the ESD board to vote, and attack the first wins. Jang activates the giant base weapon and easily hits the ball. David wants them to bring him back for his studies, and Lanford agrees to send a team of scientists. But David must return to DC for political reasons, which leaves David furious. Lanford publicly declares that they have defended Earth from a second attack. Whitmore sees him on TV and gets nervous because he can tell they are not the same aliens, so he thinks he should warn everyone. Patricia believes he needs to calm down and trust the new principal. Whitmore accepts to go to bed, but when Patricia checks on him later, she finds that he's gone. Meanwhile, Jake understands David's frustrations and wants to help. He goes behind Jiang's back and steals the shuttle, which he flies to Africa, where he picks up David, Floyd, Umbutu, and Catherine. After a bumpy ride through the old mothership's wreckage field, they find the sphere, and Jake and David prepare to retrieve it. On Earth, the United States holds a celebration to celebrate the anniversary of the First War victory. Whitmore interrupted Lanford's speech, trying to warn everyone, but at that moment his head began to ache and he collapsed. In the hospital room, Okun is painting formulas on the walls when he suddenly feels the same pain, with Umbuto following closely behind. People on the moon are shocked to see a new alien mothership arrive and come very close to Earth. Charlie rushes to take control of the shuttle and captures Jack and David before they are crushed. Adams gets the alert on the ground and calls off the celebration, while Jake takes over so Charlie can catch the ball with the robot's arms. It takes a few attempts to succeed, but when they are ready to go, they discover that the mothership has its own gravity and pulls the shuttle towards it. Jang dispatches the pilots and activates the giant weapon, but the shot fails, and the pilots are forced to turn back. The mothership returns the shots and destroys the weapon. Thus, Jiang orders everyone to evacuate before the ship flies too close and destroys much of the moon, including the base. The ESD activates the orbital defense system, but the mothership destroys all of the satellites before they can launch. A few minutes later, the mothership reaches Earth, dragging Jake's shuttle with it. The proximity begins to destroy many cities, and the ship's gravity draws in people and buildings alike. David realizes he wants to land in the North Atlantic, and Jake has to start doing some crazy moves to avoid getting hit by a wreck. Lanford orders all coastal towns to be evacuated, but some boats don't get the message in time. David's father, Julius, is sailing when he sees the ship's arrival. David calls to tell him that this ship is much larger than the previous one. But the call ends when the mothership goes down and Julius crashes into another boat. Elite pilots come from the moon to help with the defenses, but Dylan doesn't get there in time and has to watch his mother help a woman and her child escape before she goes down to the hospital building. Whitmore and Patricia meet with Adams at Area 51, and Okun flees his room to join their meeting. The aliens in the cages have gone crazy, and Yukon thinks they're partying. As David and the others also arrive, Whitmore sneaks into a locked room and releases one of the aliens to establish contact. The alien uses its tentacles to grab Pitmore and talk through him, saying, "She's arrived, she's everything." Catherine shows the alien the circle symbol and asks what it means, which causes the alien to become angry. The soldiers realize Tantrum is about to kill Whitmore, so they shoot the alien to stop it. The bullets don't do much, but Umbutu comes up and uses his blades to attack the alien. This large object is just a shield, and as soon as it is broken, the real little alien appears, which kills Umbutu instantly. Meanwhile, on the coast, a group of siblings who have just lost their parents is trying to escape and find shelter. Among the wreckage, they discover Julius' destroyed boat and the unconscious man inside. They confirm that he is still alive and take him with them. The Area 51 team scouts the mothership, helping David understand that she is everything means that the aliens are one big hive and that their mega queen has just arrived. Then, a reconnaissance plane sends them a live feed from under the sea, showing that this mothership is also digging. It appears they are after Earth's molten core, and if they get it, they will destroy all life as we know it. David points out that during the First War, they won by destroying the mothership, which means there must have been another queen inside the ship at the time. This means that they do not need to destroy this more powerful ship. They just need to kill the queen. Lanford authorizes the mission to find the Queen, and all of the pilots prepare. Drones will fly forward to disable the shields. Then pilots will fly cover for launchers that will fire cold fusion warheads that must penetrate the hull and kill the Queen. The pilots approach the mothership, which immediately opens its defenses. The planes do their best to fly around and maintain a defensive position, but the ship is heavily guarded, and it is impossible to get to the top of the ship. After losing 2 bombers, Jake points out that entering the ship is the only chance they have. Dylan agrees that it is dangerous, but also the only way. So Adams lets them go while he orders the others to provide backup. When you enter the planes, you are shocked to see that there is a whole ecosystem there. At that moment, Whitmore wakes up and tells Patricia that the Queen knows she is coming. Patricia rushes to Adams to tell him it's a trap, but it's too late. The Queen sends a special wave that disables all the planes. The pilots begin to fall to their death, but they still release bombs in an attempt to finish the mission. Unfortunately, the explosion does not hit the Queen as she is surrounded by an energy field. Suddenly, a second wave comes out of the alien system, and this wave is so big that it disables all the satellites, the Area 51 base, and the President's hideout. The mothership then uses the opportunity to attack the bunker, killing everyone inside, including Lanford. Moments later, military leaders arrive at Area 51 and name Adams the new U.S. president. Catherine shows Yukon's drawings to Umboto, and he manages to translate some of them. There is mention of an intergalactic war, and something about stopping the enemy before they reach Earth. This makes Umbutu realize that Sphere wants to be an ally, since aliens are also its enemy. Inside the mothership, Jake and Dylan, among a few other pilots, manage to survive the fall, so now they must hide in the ecosystem so as not to be caught. At the base, Oaken manages to open the capsule using a special laser and scans the sphere, but he can't detect any signals. Floyd gets close to touching the ball out of curiosity, and the smooth surface starts sucking his hands. After a few seconds, the ball activates and leaves Floyd before beginning to communicate in English, which it learned from Floyd's mind. At the same time, the Queen gets a reading about her system and decides to don a massive piece of armor. The pilots could only watch how the top of the mothership suddenly takes off to start a new attack. Ball begins to explain that they intercepted the aliens' distress call and came to try to warn the humans, but the humans attacked Ball without asking questions first. They've battled invasive alien Ball species before, and they call their motherships harvester ships because they go from planet to planet harvesting cores to use as fuel. This sphere is the only survivor of its planet, and its system holds the key to high tech. There is a hidden planet where he teaches refugees from other fallen worlds how to make weapons that will defeat the invaders, which is why the aliens fear him. Unfortunately, now that the ball is activated, the Queen can track it. David points out that if the Queen is already coming, they can feed her as if she were feeding them first. Yukon and David think they can hide the real sphere inside the isolation chamber and repeat its radiation signal using a decoy inside a locomotive filled with cold fusion bombs. Then the Queen follows that signal into a trap. The only thing they need is some way to track down the Queen, and Adams reveals that he still has a radar truck from the First War. Adams and David speak with the few remaining pilots, explaining that since the satellites are out of order, someone will have to manually fly in to detonate the bombs, which means the pilot will not survive the mission. Patricia tries to volunteer, but Whitmore steps in and accepts the assignment, ignoring his daughter's disapproval. Meanwhile, Julius wakes up and convinces the siblings to take him to Area 51. However, he runs out of gas and is moving at ice speed. They stop at a gas station and find a school bus full of kids who were abandoned by the driver, so Julius takes over and with all the kids on board, starts driving the bus toward Area 51. Inside the mothership, the alien pilots find a hangar. Jake runs forward to distract the aliens by insulting them and urinating on their floor while his friends steal planes. The aliens do not take Jake's insults well and open fire, but before they can knock out Jake, the pilots take off on the planes and capture Jake. The aliens immediately start chasing them and closing the doors, so the pilots have to make a few extra moves to avoid getting killed. In the heat of battle, Jake apologizes to Dylan for almost killing him all those years ago. After a few close calls, the pilots were able to reach the doors, and escape just before they closed. Everyone at the base is preparing to attack. Patricia watches her father leave despite her protests and decides to travel with him to help him. At that moment, Julius and the children arrive at the bus at the same time as the Queen with her army. As Al-Qaeda and the aliens shoot to start a new war, David notices the bus and brings it to his sector for protection. Ball is placed in the isolation chamber and the Queen falls in love with it, believing Whitmore has the real signal. Patricia flies her plane close to her father and says goodbye before he confronts his sacrifice. As David places a shield around the alien army to contain the explosion, Whitmore enters the Queen's ship and detonates the bombs. For a moment, the team thinks they've won, but for some reason, the alien army still attacks and Al-Qaeda's massive weapon is shot down. As the smoke clears, it is revealed that the Queen is still alive as she protects herself with her energy shield. David gets on the bus with Julius and the kids so they can drive away as the Queen starts chasing after them. Every soldier on Earth returns to base to defend the sphere from incoming aliens, while the pilots attack the Queen, whose shield keeps her safe. The boat crew notices that there are only 6 minutes left, and at that moment, Patricia notices the Queen putting her shield down for a few seconds when she needs to attack. She takes advantage of this and shoots her weak point, destroying the shield and leaving her vulnerable. The Queen strikes her plane in retaliation, and Patricia escapes with a parachute before it crashes. The Queen then tries to go after her, but at that moment, Dylan and the others return and attack the Queen with her own technology. Inside the base, the aliens find the sphere being guarded by Ukon and Isaac, and send a message to its Queen with the location. Dylan and his team lose control of the planes because the Queen uses her cell link to make all of her techs fly around to form a new shield. Umbutu and Floyd rush into the isolation chamber to fight off the aliens, but in the struggle, an alien manages to knock out Isaacs, while Umbutu and Floyd take out the aliens. Okun must say goodbye to his husband. With only 2 minutes remaining, the Queen reaches base and begins hitting the ceiling to try to get to the ball. Dylan describes the jet shield as a tornado, and this gives Jake an idea. They activate the hand thrusters and let the tornado form a fiery vortex that knocks them out of the hive. When the Queen finally breaks the rule and takes possession of the ball, the pilots regain control of the planes and open fire on her, forcing her out of her shield. The Queen tries to walk away and nearly boards the bus, but David snaps back right before the Queen falls and eventually dies, shooting the ball in the process. Just like during the First War, the Queen's death immediately halts the exercises, and all starships crash into Earth. Everyone around the world celebrates the victory as the mothership departs, and Yukon assures that Ball is all right. David worries that Earth will not survive another attack, but Yukon reminds him that the sphere has a training program on a shelter planet, so humanity's next step is to join the intergalactic war. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to Quick Recaps for more videos like this to help the channel grow.